Good morning, everybody. Welcome, welcome. It's my pleasure to host today's webinar as we announce the Conservation Program Explorer tool. We're going to have an hour discussion with you all today. Thank you for joining. I am the facilitator for the Cascade to Coast Landscape Collaborative Leader, and I'm here on behalf of the leadership team. In short, the Cascade to Coast Landscape Collaborative works to sustain commonly held values across this region in Washington and Oregon, including biodiversity, climate adaptation, sustaining our working farms and forests, and creating vibrant rural communities. I'll have a word or two in addition to say about the partnership. But first, I want to talk about the agenda today. I have a couple of brief opening remarks to get everybody kind of oriented about the partnership and this tool that we are announcing. We're going to hear some words from Ken Miller, who is a family forest landowner, and his perspective on conservation programs and the value of this tool. And then we're going to hear from Rachel Santaolalla, who is the tool project lead. And she's going to spend some time discussing how the tool works, and she's going to demo it on our website. And at the end, we'll save time for some question and answer. So again, welcome everybody. I'm really glad that you were able to join us today. We have over 290 people registered today. I'm thrilled to see that. A lot of diversity in who's joining this group today. Clearly, there's a lot of interest in landowner incentive programs and ways to make them more functional, easier to access, and find based on your location and the kinds of programs you're interested in. People registering for this call today are from all over the place, but mostly Washington and Oregon, but as far away as Canada, Alaska, Hawaii, the Midwest, and even some East Coast states. So there's quite a bit of interest, not only in this tool, but maybe applying it to other parts of the country as well. In terms of organization, we have mostly private landowners, which I'm thrilled to see them take the time today to look at this tool to see if it helps them go about the course of managing their tree farm or their ag operation in ways that help access conservation programs in new and easy ways. But we also have state agencies, federal agencies, tribes, conservation organizations, and local governments. So welcome everybody, and appreciate you making the time to join us today. A couple of quick notes about this Zoom webinar feature. It's a little bit different than a Zoom meeting, so I'll just cover those features briefly. First of all, in a Zoom webinar, you do not have camera and microphone options. So just so you know, there's not going to be an opportunity for you to talk or turn your camera on. But on the lower bar, on the lower left control bar, you do see the chat feature. And you know how to use that. We encourage you to use it. You can chat both to the host and panelists or to everyone. Please use this to share your thoughts, your ideas, requests for follow-up. This chat will be saved as part of our meeting summary. It's going to be an important part of our follow-up after this call. Caitlin Landfield from Fish and Wildlife Service and part of our team is monitoring the chat, and she may be posting some reminders or some information there periodically. You also have the option to raise your hand. Only use that if we use some kind of an informal poll. That's not a way to ask questions in this function. The way to ask questions, and we encourage you to do this, is to use the Q&A function, which you see at the bottom bar as well. This is important because when you have questions for the speakers, whether it's Ken or Rachel or myself, please take a minute, jot that question in the Q&A right away so you don't wait till the end and maybe forget your questions. The Q&A box will store those questions, and then we will pull from those and direct them to the speakers during the latter part of the session today. So please be interactive, use the chat box, use the Q&A feature to direct questions to the speaker. Also, I want to point out we'll have a post-event survey. Please take a minute if you have a minute to complete that survey. It'll help us improve future webinars and even the tool itself. Lastly, yes, this webinar will be recorded. It'll be available both on our website, and you'll receive a link in a follow-up email after this event about 2 days from now. So you'll have a link to the recording if you want to see it again or share it with your colleagues. So let's kick this off. Landscape conservation and good stewardship is enabled by a vibrant and active community, and we appreciate you joining this community this morning. Please take a minute, use the chat box, and introduce yourself. Mention your name, the organization that you're with if you choose to, and then where you're connecting from. So please take a moment and do that now, and we will get started with the program. As you're doing that and announcing yourselves in the chat box, I'm just going to provide a quick background about the Cascades to Coast Landscape Collaborative. We're a self-directed partnership. We work in the coastal regions of Washington and Oregon, and we're really focused on landscape scale changes, invasive species, climate change development, those types of things. And we're focused on maintaining commonly held values across the region, important working lands, fish and wildlife populations, collaborative decision-making, and those types of things. And we do this in a couple of ways. One is by bringing people together around projects like this. And the other one is on mapping collective values. We released the map of our tool about a month ago in a similar webinar. So we produce maps that show large-scale priorities, but we also do projects like this that help advance our partners' priorities. And this one, of course, is on accessing conservation programs. We're non-regulatory, and when we talk about conservation, we really do it in the broadest sense, kind of as used by Gifford Pinchot and Teddy Roosevelt about careful use and wise stewardship of our natural resources. We recognize that much of the land that we focus on is private lands. It is really extremely important to pay attention to those private lands and the landowners and listen to their challenges and take steps that we can to keep their contributions to both the economy, the culture, and natural resources in the region. The reason this project came to be is really out of a series of communications that we've had with community meetings over the couple of years. We've identified these shared landscape values across the region: vibrant rural communities, healthy and resilient ecosystems, economically viable stewardship, and those types of things. But we recognize that there are stressors out there, landscape scale stressors, some of which we can control, some of which we can't. And they're identified in these blue hexagons here. And so it's important for us to understand those stressors. And then at the top of this chart, develop strategies that address those stressors. So our simple kind of theory of change here is if we understand the values, what will impact those values, we can take action now to make sure that 20, 50, 100 years out, we are taking steps to address those stressors and ensure that we have the landscape values that we subscribe to down below. So the way this really evolved is that we identified incentive programs and technical support as really a key strategy and noted that it really connects to a whole host of stressors and impacts in a beneficial way the landscape values we're talking about. So if we do a really good job on incentive programs, understanding them, delivering them to landowners, we can affect a whole host of these strategies, these stressors that we're facing, and in fact benefit a whole host of these landscape values that we're interested in, both healthy and resilient ecosystems, economically viable ownership, and continued legacy of our land ownership. That really is why we are focused on this project at this point in time. It's fairly inexpensive to pull this tool together, and we really see it as a partner building opportunity. So the tool that we're about to talk about today is really a master guide to incentives. I think a couple of our folks on this call, Ken Miller being one, said it's just not easy for us to spend a lot of time looking at the federal, state, and local government programs to see which ones apply to our land. So it would be really helpful if you could create some sort of a one-stop shop or some sort of a switchboard operator role to help landowners connect with the agencies that deliver these programs. So that's really what we're about today, make it far easier to find these programs of interest across all federal, state, local government, NGO sectors. Make it simple, keep it updated, and do it in a way that's not duplicative, that doesn't step on the roles of agencies and programs, but in fact enhances their roles and increases the kind of work that they do. Lastly, I want to talk about this project really being a true partnership. We have 11 organizations that are on the leadership team that help guide this. You can see the organizations here and the names themselves, and we really appreciate the leadership from the Farm Forestry Association, NRCS, the conservation districts in Washington, WSU Extension, Conservation Commission, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, who's also a direct funder of this project. Washington DNR is also a funder of this project. Port Blakely Tree Farm, the RCO, Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the small crew that you have today. So I really appreciate their work and their partnership in making this tool come to life. So enough for me. We've got two great speakers today. We're first going to hear from Ken Miller. Ken, if you don't know him, he's a fantastic person to work with. He and his wife, Bonnie, have lived in this area for a long time and have been active in the Farm Forestry Association for many years. His tree farm is around Grays Harbor and Thurston counties. He's received a number of awards for his stewardship of these lands, including hosting tours and a visit from Governor Gregoire when she signed the Forest and Fish Agreement many years ago. So he's really not only active on the state level in advocating for forest management and tree farmers, but he's also a collaborator. He gets together in rooms with folks and tries to figure these things out. I'm really thrilled that he's joined us today because he understands land management and the challenges of managing a family forest, and he tells it like it is. So Ken's going to share a few words about his perspective on the challenges landowners face and how this tool can help address them. And then we're going to hear from Rachel Santaolalla. She's a contractor and a consultant with Peak Sustainability Group, Warthog Information Services, and Lyndon C. Lee Associates up in Whatcom County. She's very skilled in partner engagement. If you haven't worked with her yet, you will get a chance to, and she's wonderful to work with. She has GIS skills and landscape design and tool development. She came on to join this project about a year ago and has done an amazing job community building and perfecting this tool. Both Rachel and Ken will be available to answer questions at the end of this webinar. So please, once again, do use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Okay, Ken, I'll turn it over to you now.
Okay, thanks, John. Good morning, everyone. My job is to connect with those of you who are landowners. I'm a small family forest owner. I'm not ag or a rancher, but I do consider myself a farmer. We have 150 acres of timberland, earning a few bucks occasionally, but mostly building a legacy of good stewardship for our heirs. I'm active in several landowner supportive organizations, particularly the Washington Farm Forestry Association. It has educational programs, lots of networking opportunities, and advocates for small forest landowners in the legislative and regulatory arenas. If you are a small family forest owner, you should belong to the Washington Farm Forestry Association or our sister organization, the Oregon Small Woodlands Association. I'm part of a small team representing WFFA on behalf of all of Washington's small forest landowners in Olympia. I spend most of my time working with black hats here in Olympia. Those we rightly meet with skepticism when they profess, "Hey, I'm from the government. I'm here to help you." John calls me one of a kind. Others call me PETA for pain in the ass, for speaking the truth and being obnoxiously persistent. I must confess that many of those I call black hats really have white hats, at least in their hearts. So I think John's got a picture up that describes this a little bit. There really are a lot of white hats out there from the government or quasi-government organizations. People that aren't going to rat you out if you're doing something wrong, but will coach you towards the right path. This picture is of a group of white hats that visited my family forest when they first started on this project. They all have, or believe they have, some program of real value to help my farm's productivity, help me better protect public resources, or help take some of the sting out of the black hats' help. Perhaps even helping me keep my land away from the developers we all hear from almost weekly. When we started with a 30-acre clear cut, we met with a DNR stewardship forester. They had several of them then. We walked and talked about the farm. He drafted a stewardship plan with my verbal input and ultimate signature. Just as importantly, he suggested several management steps and offered to apply on my behalf for some programs he thought would be helpful. A few months later, he came back with some paperwork for me to just sign for some cost share programs. I remember terms like FIP and SIP, and there's probably some others I just didn't pay a lot of attention. I readily signed because I got to know and trust this person. True one-stop shopping. Those days of service are gone, but perhaps coming back a little bit. The NRCS folks have finally started taking interest in small forest landowners and are increasingly helpful, competent, and trustworthy, making it a little less scary signing all their CYA forms. In more recent years, I've gotten help from the conservation districts, including the NRCS folks, and of course, DNR stewardship foresters. I've gotten help updating stewardship plans with their ever constantly changing requirements. I've gotten help with EQIP, with some planting. I've joined the Conservation Stewardship Program. I'm enrolled in the Family Forest Fish Passage Program. And I'm finally getting close to the top of the backlog for the Forest Riparian Easement Program. Some of these are very worthwhile. Some are just beer money, but incentives to do right. So today isn't about advocating for any of the many programs that are out there. It's demonstrating a tool intended to point you in the right direction to meet a variety of needs or wants. You simply plug in a little bit of information and it points you to the person standing in front of me in this picture or their organization that has something to offer that you think you might be interested in. It doesn't quite replace my old DNR stewardship forester, but perhaps broadens my horizon by exposing me to some program of interest that he or she might not have been aware of. When people try to tell me something is simple, my mind immediately rejects that notion based on experience. This tool, while it doesn't make recommendation, it does go a long ways towards matchmaking, pointing you towards what you might be interested in. It's a big deal gathering up all of this information and keeping it current, but it really sells itself. Rachel will walk you through its simple steps. Take it away, Rachel.
Okay, thank you, Ken, for your time and participation today, as well as the whole process of helping to develop these tools and give landowner feedback to CCLC. The Conservation Program Explorer began with Adam, a prior person working on this project who was an environmental conservation master's student at the Nelson Institute at UW-Madison. He had a background in user experience and web design, and he helped build the website and Conservation Program Explorer tool prototype. He worked with John to get feedback from landowners, and he worked with Aaron Butts on a separate but related spatial mapper tool. After graduating, Adam moved on to another job in the spring of 2021, and I resumed the project earlier this year near summer. So as you can see here, there's a map on this slide, and a large portion of it is in gray. These are the private landowners in the region. They play a very important role that deserves recognition. Land management is important for the benefit of the farmer, their family, their community, and the region as a whole. Community values productive farms and forests, healthy fish and wildlife populations, connected habitats which allow for those healthy fish and wildlife populations. We also value vibrant rural communities, collaborative decision-making, and acknowledging that these are voluntary choices for landowners. The Conservation Program Explorer supports projects that add to these community values and addresses regional challenges like development, siloed decision-making, effects of climate change, and invasive species. Together, we are strategically designing the future of our landscape. And we're noticing that the impacts of these voluntary choices is significant. The Program Explorer tool is primarily for private landowners and producers, but is also available for anyone like agency staff or anybody else who wants to see what incentive programs are available to private landowners. It's meant to bridge barriers to program awareness and access so that there can be further engagement in them. As Ken mentioned, this tool addresses the help that landowners need to easily sort through everything out there while maintaining their own daily work on their land. This is a one-stop shop for folks to see what's available for their specific needs, so they don't have to spend time looking at programs that don't pertain to their land use or their desired incentive. It's also designed for direct access to incentive program managers for landowner engagement, so you can get directly in touch with the people running the programs. We've done our best to include all programs available, and there might be more out there that you know about that I don't. So please feel free to contact me if you know about a program that is not on our website. And then moving on to our next slide. The Biodiversity Council created a report in 2003 that identified 42 different types of incentive programs in use in Washington. There were some other reports done around incentive programs that were being used. So there are a lot of different types of incentive programs out there. They're primarily federal, state, and local governments, but they can also be private, tribal, non-government organizations. So the way that the tool developed was we kind of looked at all the different incentive types and then came up with these 6 categories here: financial, tech assistance, marketing, recognition, conservation baking, and regulatory options. So we chose these 4 in green: financial, tech assistance, and then we grouped together marketing and recognition. But first, how do we define an incentive? We defined it as a program that landowners can directly access a benefit from. So that's what made us decide that these were the best categories to go with for now, for the beginning of this tool. This would help with private decision-making by helping with funding, technical assistance, and actually, John, you could go back for a second. So marketing and recognition programs help production and sales, which in turn add economic value. Relying on these categories of incentive programs takes regulatory burden off of private landowner shoulders, and it provides crucial feedback to program providers to show where there are inadequacies in the incentive programs. So utilizing the array of incentive programs offsets economic pressures to convert or develop land, and it offsets the disruption of critical ecological processes like fish passage, which is crucial to water quality for all. As an example, these programs support the continued legacy of private land ownership. They maintain healthy, resilient, and connected ecosystems, and they support economically viable land ownership. To aid the working relationship of agencies and landowners, it is important to maintain the perspective that involvement in these programs is voluntary upon the landowner's choosing. These incentive programs support them with profitability, economic vibrancy, cultural significance, empowering ownership of private lands. Our hope is that by providing easier access to landowner incentives, landowners can continue to maintain ownership over the coming decades. So financial incentives are things that are cost sharing, one-time, annual, or lump sum payments. They can be tax benefits, grants, leases. For example, the Family Forest Fish Passage Program is one of these, where the DNR pays to fix fish passage barriers. Free technical assistance leverages planning and implementation resources or related programs. There are many programs that don't neatly fit into this category, but are included here anyways. This is, for example, a safe harbor agreement. Some other resources are the Washington State University Forestry Extension. They have a lot of coaching and planning assistance. And then marketing and recognition. These are mostly certification related, but they do add market value and product exposure. So these are things like the Sustainable Forestry Initiative, Washington Tree Farm Certification, or the DNR Backyard Forest Stewardship Program. Okay, and then we'll move on to our next. We currently have 80 programs in Western Washington. We're kind of in our phase 1 of this tool right now. And this includes Clark, Cowlitz, Grays Harbor, Lewis, Mason, Pacific, Thurston, Wahkiakum, Clallam, Jefferson, and Kitsap counties. And like I said before, this is federal, state, and governmental programs, but also some non-governmental programs. We'll be updating these programs twice a year, more or less. And as we get into the tool, I'll show you where you can let me know if there are any things that come up to your attention that need to be changed or added. And we'd like to thank Fish and Wildlife Services for funding the build out of this phase of the tool. Phase 2, we're going to be expanding across Washington State, and this will be done by the end of spring in 2022. And the Washington Department of Natural Resources has funded that expansion process. If you would like to partner with us, or you have a program that you want to make sure gets in the tool, feel free to reach out to us. We can also co-host a webinar or workshop as we expand to your area. And then also phase 3, that we're shooting for coastal Oregon first by fall of 2022. And if we have the funding, then we can expand to the rest of Oregon. So we will also be having some interns coming on in the summer from Fish and Wildlife to help us with that. Yeah, and we can go on, John. So just again, just seeing sort of where we're at, we've populated and improved our tool for Southwestern Washington, the Olympic Peninsula. We're doing our launch right now, and then we have continual monitoring and maintenance going on. We'll be expanding to Washington, getting new data sets for conservation science, and then moving down into Oregon middle to end of next year. And then now we'll go into, so we'll be going into our tool soon. And I've got a graphic here you can see in the back that's our homepage. And then on the upper right-hand corner is the tools. The Conservation Program Explorer is one of two tools that we have, and this is the one that we'll be focusing on today. When you click on it, you'll see the second graphic that pops up here. And I'll go over this again, but this is just kind of shows the landowner how this works and how to get involved and where to click to begin. So you'll see the other button, click here to start, is circled in red. And with that, I will go ahead and take the screen. Okay. So here we are on our homepage, and if you'd like to stay connected with us to see any of our build-outs or any other events or workshops coming up, right down here you can stay connected with CCLC by signing up for our newsletter. And then here's our Conservation Program Explorer. I'll click on that up there, and then that brings us to this infographic page. This tool is for landowners, producers, agency folks, and we built this to raise awareness of the programs and get people familiar and connected. And so as a landowner, whoever you are, you can come to our tool, you can pick the region, the type of land, and the type of benefit that you're interested in. And as you select those, different programs will pop up. And then just here, you can click to start. And this will bring you to the Conservation Program Explorer page where you can select your region. So the whole Eastern Washington is going to be built out in the next 6 to 8 months. And then we have our Southwest region and the Olympic region. So you can select which one you're in. We'll go with Southwest today. And then as a disclaimer here at the top of our Southwest Washington Conservation Programs page, this tool does not replace speaking with experts or program providers. It's just a resource to get people associated with what's available. And again, we've done our best to collect everything out there that we know about, and we recognize that it might not be perfect. This is a living tool, and feel free to get in touch about any changes that need to be made, anything that's missing or should be added. So this is the bulk of our tool here, these drop-down menus. And as you select them, these are the programs down here that will automatically populate. And this search bar here is for keywords only. You don't actually have to hit search in order to make these selections up here work. So let's do a couple of examples. First, let's just use the keyword search bar. So say you have some livestock and you're looking to get some cost sharing for fencing. So we're just going to type in fencing and click search. And you'll see how this pops up. And these are some different programs that you can select on. And say you don't have livestock or any trees, but you have shellfish and you're looking for some help there. Then you got the shellfish program. And you'll see that each of these has a more details page. So we'll click on that. And it shows you that it's a state program, who it's provided by, the benefits, description of the program is going to be here, and the eligibility, what you need to be eligible for it. And then we've got some contact information here and a link to full program details. I'm going to show you a few other examples and we'll get into the full program details for those. So we'll go back to our previous page. Let's select some of our drop downs. So we're going to say I'm in Thurston County and I have forest land. I'm looking for technical assistance. And yeah, it's a water focused program. So this is going to be like if you have a lake, a river, a stream running through your property or on this part of your property. Yes. And you'll notice that all of these down here are populating for that. So I know this Family Forest Fish Passage program is pretty popular. It's provided by the DNR. It gives you free technical assistance and you can get help removing barriers for fish. So let's click on more details. Again, you can see some of that information that we saw on the last screen, or on the last page. It gives you a more in-depth description. Then it shows your eligibility requirements, and then your contact information down here. And you can click on the link to the full program details, and that'll take you to the agency or the program provider's website. And from here, you can also get in touch with them or get further information. And I'm just going to exit out of this tab. Let's go over another use case. So let's say I'm in Cowlitz County and I am an agricultural landowner and I'm looking for a financial incentive. And I'm going to actually just scroll down so you can see sort of how these down here auto-populate. So let's change this out again. I'm going to say in Clark, I have forest land, and if you notice these down here, these programs are automatically populating. So let's go back because I wanted to show you. An agricultural landowner in Cowlitz looking for a financial incentive, and let's go down to this. Yeah, the Emergency Assistance for Livestock, Honeybees, and Farm-Raised Fish Program, ELAP. This is for emergencies, and the financial benefit varies. So you can see down here, there's your contact information. And I wanted to show you this one because, as you'll notice, the organization is the Local Farm Service Agency. And this is a nice, neat, it has all the contact information. You can go to the full program details. And some of these programs that are through the Farm Service Agency are specific to the county. So they don't always have the contact information. However, as you go to the program page, it'll ask you to select your region, and you'll be able to find that contact person there. So just wanted to share that with you. And then let's look at these tiles here on the right hand side. So we have planning importance is the first one. This has a link to supporting organizations, and These organizations will help you to get a land management plan. A lot of these programs require a land management plan. So I'm going to go ahead and click on supporting organizations, and you can select your county here in the drop-down bar. There's the DNR, Fish and Wildlife, the Forestry Extension. So you can go here to find support to get that land management plan or any other support that you need. Click back here. And then our second tile, landscape characteristics. If you're interested in seeing how your private land fits into the bigger picture, that slide that we showed with the map where you could see all the gray, that's the private landowners. You could go here and launch our interactive mapper tool. That's the other tool that Cascades to Coast Landscape Collaborative has. And you can see how your land fits into that bigger picture. And then this third tile here, contact us. Again, this is meant for you. So if there's anything that's not user-friendly, if you feel like you're struggling to find something, or something needs to be corrected, or there's a program that you'd like to see here, you can contact me here, and this will pop up an email page or a new email that you can just write whatever you need to. And then our fourth tile here, we would like to eventually be able to share what people's experiences have been using our tools and getting involved in these programs, so we can see, you know, how it's kind of like tracking history and seeing how has this benefited your land and helped you. So if you're interested in doing something like that and sharing your story with your community, letting people know and inspire everybody around you, you can contact us here to get more details about that. And we'll go back to our main page. And there was, I think, one last thing I wanted to share with you. If you're in here and you're looking through the drop downs, so you're like, okay, I'm in Grays Harbor and I have forest land and I'm looking for like marketing. And no, I don't have, this isn't for a water focused area. And you're seeing these things and then you remember, oh, there was the name of this program. And say you're not seeing it here and you want to enter it in the keyword search. The best way to do this is to go ahead and refresh the page. So that way it doesn't start to pull from these drop downs. So the keyword search is best to use on a fresh page. And again, the refresh is in the upper left. It looks like a little circle with an arrow, and that will help get a better search result. And then you can type in whatever it was there. So we'll just say fish passage. And then you can see if any of these programs look familiar for what you were looking for. Okie dokie. So that is pretty much it. I'm going to stop my share now. And I want to thank Ken again for his time here, and we'll move on to our Q&A and see what we can help with.
Thank you, Rachel. Nice job. We appreciate the presentation. And am I sharing my Q&A screen now, Rachel?
Yes,
Okay.
I see it now.
And I'd like Ken to join us. Welcome coming back, Ken. I appreciate that. So fantastic presentation. It's a very simple, easy to use tool, but we have some important questions coming in, and this is what we want to do in the next phase of this webinar, is to make sure you're comfortable with it. If you have questions on how to get connected or how to use it, this is a good time to do it. So please go ahead and use the Q&A box and add the questions. We have a couple of good ones coming in already. And I'd like to go ahead and share those with both Ken and Rachel and ask them to respond. So the first question, or one question, Rachel, is how are you going to maintain this database over time? There's a lot of information. it's not useful if it's not current. Can you describe the plans on how this will be maintained and kept current?
Yeah, so twice a year, we're going to be reaching out to everybody that we have in our database. So we have a little over 85 different programs right now. And we will just be contacting, looking at the websites, seeing if anything changed, also contacting the program providers and asking them to give us any updates and send them a snippet of what we've got and let us know if there's anything that's changed. And then we go ahead and update our database. It populates on the website. So about every 6 months or so, we figured. It can sometimes be a lot, but it all kind of depends. The funding for programs and the types of programs change as priorities change in the agencies.
Right. So it's important to keep this updated, and we have a pretty simple and streamlined process that Rachel's invented to reach out to the program components twice a year to find out which ones are new, which ones are still funded, and to update the contact information. And that's part of our work plan. We appreciate those that are supporting us in doing this. Another question is on the build out. Rachel, you had mentioned Eastern Washington. There's some people up in the northwest part of the state that I think were grouped into that Eastern Washington build out, but I think what we really mean is everything beyond the Olympic Peninsula and Southwest Washington. The question was, when could they expect the addition of the programs in the northwest part of the state?
Yeah, I think that will probably be in the next couple of months. Can't give you an exact date right now. However, I've been receiving a lot of contact about this region specifically. So sort of due to the demand, I think that's going to be our first area of focus as we expand. Okay. And again, to get on, I encourage you to get on our newsletter list so that we can give you updates about that. We'll let you know when it's ready to go.
Right. Good. We had one question. It looked like you may have answered this, Ken, in the chat box, but that was about how can land or people get connected with other participants, private forest landowners. And Ken, why don't you just mention again the role that Washington Farm Forestry plays and how they can get in touch with your organization if they want to reach out to like-minded forest owners to share experiences or get information. Another chance to plug WFFA.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, the Washington Farm Forestry Association, just type it into the Google and you'll get it. The same with OSWA in Oregon. Lots of information there, but it's just a group of small forest landowners. So we get together, we have chapter meetings, education. Of course, this COVID thing's just screwed everything up, but we're all anxious to get out in the field again. We like to have tours of different people's tree farms just to see what they're doing. And it's usually a lot of experts in the group and free answers. But that's really good organization. I posted my email address there if somebody wants to contact me. I'd be happy to try to answer whatever questions you might have.
Right. And their last slide after this, as we close things out, we'll have the email addresses again for both Ken and Rachel. A great question just came in here about saying there's a lot of agencies on this webinar. How do we plan to market this to small landowners so that they know about this tool? And I think we'll start with you, Rachel, and then Ken, maybe you can talk about anything WFFA can offer too in terms of marketing or promotion. But Rachel, why don't you start with how we can spread the word about this tool, the website, brochures, other types of things that you haven't planned?
Yeah, so we do have a brochure, and it will be on our website, as well as a print version will be distributed to small landowners through the different agencies, like the Small Forest Landowner Office and others that have more connection with those private landowners. Will be able to either send them out or have them available at their local offices or some other areas where those small landowners frequent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and from my vantage point, of course, our Washington Farm Forestry Association will, have that on our websites for our members. as far as forest landowners in Washington State, the best way to get information out is through Tammy McKeed. I believe she's on here, the DNR Small Forest Landowner Office. And I didn't notice, but the WSU Extension has a quite extensive list of contacts for small forest landowners, quite prolific on their what they post. So I'm sure Andy Perleyberg will be sharing this information quite widely. So I'm not worried about getting the word out.
Right. The idea is that this link can be widely shared by other agencies and organizations to the tool, and Rachel's available to make presentations if people want this presentation made to their groups. Maybe it's their farm forestry chapter, maybe it's a local organization that wants to have this presentation. So it will be recorded, and Rachel's available to do a lot of community outreach as well. The idea, of course, is that our project team that helps guide this group, who I've listed here, will take an active role in sharing this information through their websites and through their communications as well. Next question was about, is this only for ag and forest lands, or can a landowner with property along a creek, for example, find a program to assist with habitat restoration? Maybe you're not in ag practices per se or forest, but you're a landowner in a rural area. Rachel, do you want to answer that?
Sure, John. So these programs are, I think, for anyone, I'm pretty sure. But we were just focusing on forest and ag landowners as part of our conservation science, just sort of what we got from that. And that was part of our development of the tool, was just focusing on the specific group. I think that answers that.
We had a couple of questions come in also about when people registered about things that were on their mind they'd like to see us address during this session. One was about carbon projects, increasing interest in carbon projects, where ag and mostly small timber can get access to potentially just some of the financial support coming from producing and managing carbon on their lands. Can you comment on that, Rachel? Do we currently include carbon programs, and what's the future look like?
Yeah, we do have a carbon program. It is called Forest Carbon Works, and I encourage you to look at that one. I am happy to share screen too and show you how to get there. That is, yeah, I think it sounds like a great program. I don't know, would you like me to share?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Okie dokie. So I'm just going to go back to our Southwest region here. And then I'm going to type in the keyword search carbon. I think that'll pop up. Yeah, forest carbon offset by Forest Carbon Works. And so you can have as little as 40 forested acres. Privately owned, and it's a financial benefit. It's over a long period of time, 25 to 75 years. You can contact Sandy Letzing. Sorry, Sandy, if I pronounced your last name incorrectly. But this is her email address, her phone number. She is a longtime forester, has been working in Washington for a long time, and she resides in Oregon. She's the PNW, Pacific Northwest Forester, for this national program. The funding comes from California, and they work with landowners for your specific needs and reevaluate things over time. So yeah, this is a great program. Mm-hmm. And we'll have some more. I think there's some more out there that we'll be getting in, but that's what we've got for now.
Great, thank you. And I know we're going to see probably additional carbon related programs come online with the legislature's interest and just the increasing landowner interest. So this is a good example, I think, of why we will outreach to agencies and organizations throughout the year to add new programs as they come online. So be sure and check back frequently. We had a question about our partnerships and the important role conservation districts play in this state in coaching landowners on conservation programs, both for ag and shellfish and timber. And the question was, can CDs be used to help put this link on their tool for the mapper? We've discussed that. We've had the conservation districts as a close partner along the way. And as we launch this site and begin to build out Eastern Washington, we're going to circle back around again with those organizations to talk about how they can do even more extensive outreach about this tool. We've had a really good conversation of partnership with conservation districts and the Conservation Commission, not only seeing the value of this tool to bring landowners into their programs, but also for new agency staff that need to get up to speed quickly on what sorts of programs are available at the federal, state, and local level. So really good response, and shout out to the partnership we have with conservation districts. Got a couple more minutes left. If you have any more questions, drop them in the box. I've got one or two here on the queue. One is, as we build out to Eastern Washington, Rachel, when would we get to Spokane County? In other words, do you have a sequence in mind of between now and June when the rest of the state is covered?
I don't have like a full sequence. I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, that the Northwest region I've gotten the most contact from and desire to see this tool built out there. So sort of Northwest Puget area is what I'm going to be focusing on next. I appreciate hearing that there is a desire for it to be in Spokane. So yeah, it will all be completed by the end of May, June next year at the latest. So it is a definitive date. I can give you that and let you know probably earlier. But yeah, please let me know if you have a desire for this to be built out for your area. That helps me focus my efforts.
Mm-hmm. Great. So this is a really important project, and a lot of support for this in Washington, and we're going to increase our partnership in Oregon. Somebody just asked the question about this tool, and is there any interest from other parts of the country replicating this model elsewhere? Rachel?
I think we did get a little bit of this question from some people on the East Coast and Northeast USA. So there is interest in replicating this there. I think we've gotten a little bit of interest in Northern California. And two, I wanted to touch on the last question as well. Sorry, our advisory team also helps us make some of these decisions. So I just wanted to acknowledge their efforts and a lot of their support too.
Right. Yeah, in all honesty, this idea has been around for a while, but we finally brought it to fruition with the internet, with Rachel's time, and with our partnership support. But you can go back into some of the incentive programs in Washington and Oregon. 4 or 5 years ago, they were talking about making it easier to access these programs and how it's kind of beyond any one agency's job to do that. So this collaborative approach is really making sense. We have people on this call from New Jersey, quite a few different areas across the country, and I suspect that's their interest. How do I replicate this in my neck of the woods? If that's your interest, contact Rachel. She can show you how this is built and coach you, and it's pretty simple technology that Adam helped us create, and it's a fairly low budget operation with a great gain. So I'd encourage you to reach out to Rachel if you're from outside this region interested in seeing this brought into your neck of the woods. Do you include land trusts as incentive programs? I think the answer on that right now is we want to make sure all the land trusts in the state are aware of this. We're inviting them to participate on an advisory committee. We've talked about adding a directory to land trusts on our website. So land trusts, as you know, sometimes implement these programs with landowners, conservation easements, and a whole host of things. We see them as a close partner and somebody that helps implement these programs. So I think we'll add them to our partnership list. And to the extent they foster any of their own programs, which I know some of them do, they will be included or are included in our database. Okay, I think that's about it. Let's go ahead and wrap up, folks. I really appreciate everybody spending time on the call today. I want to acknowledge the CCLC leadership team, many of whom are on the call, the Conservation Program Advisory Team, whose slide I showed a minute ago, for supporting this work. Especially want to thank the Fish and Wildlife Service Science Application Program out of Portland for funding this, and then the DNR funding as well. Much appreciated. I want to thank Ken and Rachel for their presentations and joining us this morning. Contact Ken if you're interested in the Farm Forestry Association or joining a fantastic group of family forest owners for coaching and education and participation in policy. And then contact Rachel if you have thoughts or ideas on how to improve this tool. And I want to thank you, the audience. We had over 100 of you join and be with us throughout the morning. I really appreciate that. Please take a minute and respond to the brief survey that you received at the close of this webinar. We really take your information that you submit seriously, and we'll take that and help us improve future forums and improve our tool. So please use the tool, join our mailing list, connect with us if you have an interest in applying the tool to your work or becoming involved in the work of the Cascade to Coast Landscape Collaborative. With that, I want to thank you all and wish you a good day.